So, good afternoon, everyone. We're talking governance. Go figure. So, it was 26 years ago, and I almost made a Sergeant Pepper's joke there. So, it's 26 years ago. I was promoted from desk side and server support into IT service delivery for Xerox. Among my first tasks in this 90,000 seat organization was to establish governance for my service. What is this governance I was being asked to do? Thank you, manager. So I went on the internet, like anyone might have done, looked for a definition of what governance is. And I got this. Go on. Yeah, about 100 words written at a college level telling me what the benefits of governance was, what the requirements of governance was, what outcomes you can expect from governance, what are the consequences of not having good governance. You know what it didn't tell me? Once I stripped out all of those selling points, what is governance? I couldn't find a definition that would tell me what governance was. Drove me crazy. For 20 years, it drove me crazy. I kept coming back to it time and time again like a sore tooth. Then I had an epiphany. I looked in the English dictionary. Go figure. This is where I found a definition that helped me figure out what governance is. And it got me about 90% of the way there. And I've formulated my own definition. So I start out with the golden triangle. Governance is the people, processes, and technologies controlling, that's a key word, resources. And you can use this definition for any kind of governance context that you might find yourself in front of. You could apply this to pretty much anything like traffic laws, where the resource would be the roadway. My name is Mark Christman, as we've mentioned. I've been with the Rochester Security Summit for 4 years on staff. This is my first year speaking. In the past 30-ish years, I've been doing, forming, consulting, teaching, governance, and running from there. What we're going to be talking about in the next 40-ish minutes to give time for questions is the high-level basics that I've picked up along the way. These are the things that I could never find content on. It was difficult at best, nearly impossible. This is the stuff I wished I'd been able to find or somebody had been able to tell me. First up, forget all the buzzword bingo, the sales definitions and justifications. Uncontrolled resources can mean spending your organizations into non-existence. Or in the context of an information security professional or a compliance professional, it could even mean individual fines or even arrests and convictions. Don't do that. Now, coming back to the definition of governance, the resource that you're working with sets the context for your governance framework or structure. Infrastructure governance will focus on the resource life cycle and consumption. This is what I was working with most of my time in doing service delivery and service architecture. Information security and compliance is going to focus on the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Another thing that I picked up along the way is one size does not fit all. This is going to be a key thought for you. Most of the content you're going to find out on the internet is written in the active voice. It's what we're all taught to do when we're writing. It's active voice, which means it sounds prescriptive. Do this or thou shalt fail, or thou shalt not be successful. Reality is you're dealing with a recommended pattern and practice. Doesn't necessarily mean it's right for your organization, because the content provider is making assumptions about the organization, the geographic footprint, the industry. Look at the content that is being delivered to you. Evaluate it, make sure that it works for your situation, your organization, and your geographic footprint. If it works for you, awesome, use it. If not, feel free to discard it. Just because you read something doesn't mean you have to use it. Not everything will fit. That was a lesson that took me a long time to learn, and even longer to help my leadership understand. Difficult conversation. Next thought. Complexity brings with it inherent risk. And this is driven through any number of means. Whether you're dealing with some of the more easily controlled risks, or you're dealing with things that are more difficult to control, so like your organizational size, the structure. These are less controllable. Industry and geographic footprint are less controllable. Customization, right? Build the thing. Services and system architecture, these are more easy to control. And what do you do about mitigating that risk? This is where formality comes in. And everybody loves this. We're going to get more into the formality as we go on. But it's a mitigation against complexity. Making sure you have formal structures in place and consistently applied will help reduce the impact or the likelihood of an impact of complexity risk. And formality can come in a couple ways. Everybody's favorite, detail and documentation. Quick raise of hands. Who likes writing documentation? Yeah. We all love documentation. The next bit of formality is the size and composition of your governance teams, whatever the framework, whatever the context of your governance. That was interesting. Formality around meetings, and even going as far as using something like parliamentary procedure for your meetings, a la Robert's Rules. These are types of formality that you might leverage to help mitigate against complexity. So I mentioned formality is a mitigation tool. Informal governance is also viable. And what do I mean by informal governance? This is where you don't have a team. In service delivery management, that would be the service delivery manager making decisions about what kind of controls to put into place, or the service architect making those decisions unilaterally. Very informal. I got into a debate with somebody that I was working with. They mentioned governance is a team sport. Well, ideally, yes. But there's going to be situations, depending on the type of architecture you have and the size of your organization, that it just doesn't make sense. If you've got an organization with 100 people in it, well, your governance controls might be limited to the one person who's in charge of security and compliance. And it's very common with monolithic services. All right, so on-premises services, Gesundheit. All right, governance structures. This is one of those highly contested ideas. And every governance document that I've ever read, every blog post, every video that I've watched has had different ideas on what you're going to be doing for your governance structures. How much do your stakeholders and your peers need to be involved in or collaborate on decisions? That's a key question you want to answer as you're getting into how you're structuring your governance. If you're thinking of on-premises systems that are separate, other than existing on the same network, maybe that's a very narrow group of people. Now think of a cloud service with services and systems existing on the same platform. Everybody has to share the same space. Every system owner, every service owner has a stake in decisions that are being made about the platform. The drivers to collaborate on decisions are different. What size is your organization? That's going to be a driver. One of the things that drove me absolutely up the wall when I was at Xerox, 90,000 seats, was this recommendation that the CFO be sitting on my governance team. The CFO of a $17 billion company is not going to sit on my little service delivery governance team. So what do you look for instead? Who can fill that role? Again, going back to one size does not fit all. Look for what fits, use what fits, tailor it as needed. It might be the controller for your division, might be the controller for your work group. Whoever that is, leverage them to fill the role that they're talking about. So, I mentioned earlier service delivery, monolithic structures. Ad hoc is the most common model that I see in the smaller organizations and in situations where you have one owner of a system. This is especially true with on-premises systems. One or two people making decisions. Documentation, when you're dealing with this, is sparse. Because how much documentation is one or two people going to be able to produce when you're looking at all of the other work that's on their plate? This is how informal governance manifests. Then we get into team-based and structured. Key thought for you, keep your teams to the 2 pizza rule. Only enough people that 2 pizzas can feed. Once you start getting larger than that, now you've got complexity based on the formality that you're putting into place. Focus on your key stakeholders. This is where a stakeholder management plan can come into play. Multi-tiered organizations. And you notice I've asterisked the strategic or executive. Strategic may not look like the team model. It may look different. In fact, it may exist before you start forming your governance teams. A lot of organizations have these strategic structures in place that have developed over time, right, at that senior leadership level. If it already exists, use it. There's no reason to make a change unless it's not working. Right? If it works, use it. If it fits your organization, use it. Strategic rarely has a charter. I'm going to talk about charters in a second. Strategic typically only documents policies and strategies. Large enterprise organizations are more likely to have some form of multi-leveled structure and that tactical or technical governance, as well as the operational governance. The difference between the two, think strategic policies, think tactical, technical is procedures, no, not procedures, standards, maybe guidelines, operational is procedures. So those 4 different document types that are going to be most of what you produce in governance. Tactical and technical is mostly the standards. Often, these layers overlap. One governance team that I put together had strategic and technical combined. Operational governance does tend to get left out. All right, now we're going to get into the meat and fun. I pulled this quote from a book that I like, Tom Clancy, Dead of Honor. If it isn't written down, it probably won't or probably didn't happen. You have no proof historically that it happened. You have no plan going forward that it will happen. This is why, even though I hate writing documentation, I do it anyways. So some key tips for documentation success. Should be clear, complete, current, correct, and consistent. If you want a good style guide for this, the Air Force has a style guide called Tongue and Quill. Not a bad resource to actually get into how to write standards, procedures, policies. Some additional tips. A key goal is transparency. Error on the side of over-communication. Let's see here. No, I don't have anyone who would know where that quote came from in the room. Well, one person. All right. Readers should know what to expect. And this is where you get into a standard format and using style guides. I actually like using the Microsoft style guide for technical writing. Google has one, there's a couple others out there, but pick one. Consistently use it. It doesn't matter which one that you pick so much as you're using it consistently. As far as a common template, SANS has a really great set of templates out there. Actually, the link I've got up on the screen here is a set of samples information security policies. And you may already have a common outline for policies in your organization. Why not leverage it? You don't have to go out to SANS and go reinvent the wheel if it already exists in your organization. Because if you use the one that already exists, that's consistent. Be clear on the why. Oh, please, be clear on the why. Not for your users, not for the people who are going to be consuming it, but for you. You, in 6 months' time, when you have to go review this document and try and recreate why it is that you wrote it. It can help mitigate exception requests, but this is really about making sure that you have a good, solid understanding of what it was you were thinking when you originally wrote the document. Be kind to yourself. So I mentioned these document types already. Strategic or executive governance is going to be concerned with your policies. Technical and tactical governance is going to be concerned with standards and maybe procedures. That procedures will be more likely operational governance. And then guidelines will probably be a mix of technical, tactical, and operational. How should people be thinking about what they're doing, right? What are the guidelines for creating a password, for instance? All right, next bit. You're building a team. Great. Build a charter. Create a charter for that team. This is a specific document type within your governance framework. What is the authority that the team has? What is the source of authority for that team? What scope do they have? Use other charters as examples. Answer additional questions like, how do people become members of the team? Right? It's one thing to form the team, but 3 years from now, when you've had a couple people turn over, how do you maintain that membership? Think that through. Is it because of the position they hold in the organization? Is there a nomination structure on how you're doing this? Is it by appointment from an executive? Identify your level of formality. This is the artifact for your team's existence. And hey, you know what? One of the biggest struggles I've had putting governance into place is executive buy-in. You get a charter put together, clearly articulated. This is how you can get buy-in. And if the executive signs off on it, your source of authority, they've by default bought into your governance structure. Side note on this, for a governance team, creating brand new, make sure your governance participation is part of people's annual reviews. It's something that they're measured on. They get credit for doing. Because it's great to have a team put together, but if they're not being measured on participating in the governance team, they're going to start focusing on what they are being measured on. And that governance team will die on the vine. An additional bit here. Governance teams are an opportunity for members to start demonstrating leadership. And this is something that the younger crowd can struggle with. Oh, I have to demonstrate leadership before I can get a promotion, but I don't have any opportunities to demonstrate leadership. This is a good opportunity to do that. Next bit. Document control. This comes back to consistency. Clear, concise, complete, current. This is where currency comes into play. Control your document life cycle. Include periodic peer reviews. This is where I tend to agree and disagree with the Agile Manifesto, which says working software over comprehensive documentation. In this case, a governance team, 90% of what you're doing is documentation. And the reason the Agile Manifesto says this is because documentation becomes stale quickly, almost as soon as you write it, which is a pain. Document control is the formal mitigation for errors in out-of-date documentation. Who has a document control system in place today? Yeah, some. Some. Cool. There are a number of resources, and my favorite is the link up on the screen to talk you through how to implement document control. Fantastic resource. All right. Now, I've run pretty fast on this. I'm going to give you a couple closing thoughts and then open up for questions. Governance is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's about control. It's that people, processes, and technologies controlling resources. It's simple, but it isn't easy to do. Use a critical eye when evaluating content about governance. Don't just take what's written or presented. That includes what I've been talking about. Anything that I've been talking about today, if it fits your situation, your organization, please use it. If it doesn't fit, don't. Use that same critical eye on any content that you're reviewing about governance. The complexity in your environment, or the more complex your environment, the more formality is going to help you. That doesn't mean going to the extent of writing a constitution-sized charter, though it might. And the Constitution, by the way, is a charter. Don't use formality for its own sake. Just because you can be formal doesn't mean you have to be. Use the right amount of formality. Don't overburden yourselves. Documentation is crucial. It needs ongoing care and feeding. Don't write it and forget it. Manage your document life cycle. And don't let your documents fail you by neglecting them. All right. So as I said, I went pretty fast. We're a couple minutes earlier than I expected. So, any questions? Any thoughts? Any of this resonate with you?
I have one question, and I do this as well. I'm a consultant, do this.
Okay.
How do you get started with that governance? I've worked with organizations very large, and they say, well, we got our policies, we got this, and you look at them like, ugh. Or I'm working with an organization right now, they're not even in production. We're building that entire program. How do you get started or convince senior leadership that they've got to have a governance program? There's a number of frameworks, ISO, everything talks about building out that governance framework. NIST CSF has a whole govern section now, but building that governance framework. How would you advise an organization? We need to head down this path.
Well, it depends on the situation. If you are in a situation where somebody junior is recognizing that governance is necessary, it may be that you need to start working on buy-in from senior leadership. If it's senior leadership that's identifying this and pushing down, now you're going to get into stakeholder management, identifying the stakeholders who may or may not be involved in that governance or in those decisions. And it doesn't, just because somebody is a stakeholder doesn't mean they should be on the governance team. Right? Just because they're concerned with the decisions that are being made, they may not have the influence that you're going to need to help move things along in your governance body. So, regardless of where you start, getting the senior leader buy-in or going directly to your stakeholder management situation, one of the first steps is your stakeholder management. So either get buy-in and then stakeholder management, or just straight into stakeholder management.
So that once you have this buy-in for stakeholder management, what is the expected outcome of that initial start? What do you see the initial outcome of that initial start of your governance? Is it, I'm expecting an answer of essentially like saying, here are the risks to the organization, and then here are how our policies, controls, procedures, standards all mitigate said risk and cover that risk. In other words, you're coming up with, like, there's no sense in coming up with a secure coding policy if you don't write code in your organization. That kind of thing.
I'm actually looking at it as two parts. The first is agreeing on how the governance team will operate. That's getting into that chartering activity. One of the first chartering activities I went through was 6 months long, and that was with a team of 12. So how are decisions being made? How are you identifying what should be worked on? What's the source of authority? All of those kinds of things in your chartering activity. That doesn't mean you ignore the other things, right? And this is where I pull a little bit from Agile, and okay, what are the things we need to work on? And rank order them. And work on the first one first. And both of those activities can help inform the other. As you're putting together that list, as you're working through that list, that can help inform how you're making decisions and what you're going to document in your charter for consistency stake. And what you're documenting in your charter for consistency stake can help inform how you're addressing that list of work. Does that get to what you're after?
Sure.
Okay.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Do you have any thoughts on definitions of risk versus issues, and how big a risk register might be? And I know it's all variable based on company or whatever, but you could take one model where you're tracking down every single pen test finding and have thousands of vulnerabilities in a risk register, or you could have things that are never going to be like they might be attacked by a terrorist. Everything in between, so it's hard to, is that all part of the chartering exercise, or is that at some other level?
No, I would look at how you define a risk register as a separate level. I wouldn't maintain that in the charter. You can. I personally wouldn't. And there's a couple components to my thinking on this. And we're talking about risk registers and, sizing and how you approach this. First up, I like using the Lean Six Sigma FMEA as the baseline for my risk register. Anyone know what the Lean Six Sigma FMEA is? Failure mode effects analysis? So it's taking the standard risk register where you've got risk and impact and adding visibility. Can you see or identify when a risk has been realized? That's the visibility part. And that's why I like using the FMEA. As far as what risks to maintain, that's a difficult one. Because you want to make sure that as people have identified risks, you keep them documented so you don't retread the same ground. But the active maintained register, and this is a little subjective, I would tend to start with medium and move up in criticality. So anything that would be registered as low, meaning highly visible, low impact, or very low risk, wouldn't be maintained on your main register. But I wouldn't not keep that documented someplace so that you don't retread the ground.
For me, one of the things, and again, as I work with different organizations, I can take that vulnerability scan and right, it's thousands. What am I able to patch? What am I not able to patch? Or within that time frame of our patching time frame, stuff that I may need an exception for, it's non-patchable, end of life serve, I'm gonna put that on my risk register. Otherwise, I'm treating it toward patching. The other thing that drives really for me the risk register entry is where's my risk tolerance? Mark's talking about those informational findings, and yes, they add up, but that concept is, if my risk tolerance is I'm only focusing on the highs, the criticals, maybe I might look at the mediums, I'm not feeding that stuff in, it becomes noise. And you want the risk register something, my role, I want it to be reported on, I want to be able to track it, identify it, use it almost as a metric, not just this collection of everything that we've got to fix in the environment. What's my actual risk? And sometimes it's taking some of those vulnerabilities and grouping them. I've got a misconfiguration, or I've got some bad configuration files, or a bad state of faucets. That's a bigger risk, addressing those vulnerabilities, than just adding this particular configuration. That's just my opinion.
Well, there's also all these different waivers, I guess, or certifications of risk register that you consider, like regulatory risk, assessment findings, right? So it's,
Sure.
so,
Not everything always hits the risk register in the book.
Yeah.
Some things we have to track and work on them, but they may not be risk register. I had another question right next to me.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, I know you mentioned like, you kind of like led the initiative for governance. Like, was there like one specific thing that like drove that? Like, that where you're like, well, we have to pay more attention to this? Was it like one specific thing, or were things just kind of popping up?
So thank you for the question. What drove the need for governance, right? In my case, I'm coming from an infrastructure background. It was the move from on-premises to cloud, where in the service delivery context, we're now living in the same platform. We need to talk to each other. How are we going to do that? We need to be able to come to agreement on things. How are we going to do that? And that was the real initial driver, that one of my first governance structures, or first real governance structure, came from. That probably doesn't help in a security and compliance context, but hopefully that helps. Any-
Any other questions, thoughts for Mark this afternoon? Want to take a second here and present Mark. We do have a certificate for you today and a gift card from ISA, thanking you for your talk today.
Thank you.
It is